The Galactic Academy of Military Excellence was the most elite training institution in the known universe. It was where the best warriors from 100 different species came to prove themselves, to test their limits, refine their combat abilities, and prepare for war. It was a place of discipline, honor, and the relentless pursuit of perfection. It was also, at this very moment, in absolute chaos, because a Deathworlder had just enrolled, and no one knew how to handle it. The rumors had spread like wildfire. A human was joining the academy. For weeks, the whispers echoed through the halls. A Deathworlder? Here. Is it safe to be near one? I heard they eat raw meat and drink liquid fire. No one had ever seen a Deathworlder before. They were mythical beings, whispered about in the darkest corners of military history. The kind of creatures that should not logically exist, and yet somehow, against all reason, thrived on planets that actively tried to kill them. And now, one was real. A group of alien cadets gathered in the cafeteria, whispering in hushed, anxious voices. A reptilian Sarnak cadet flicked his forked tongue nervously. Has anyone seen it yet? A six-limbed Thryn soldier clicked its mandibles. I heard it already killed an instructor by accident. Barely touched him. Instant vaporization. A floating, gelatinous Vorlex engineer shuddered. I heard their bones are made of metal. A crystalline Cathari officer whispered in dread. Number. That's wrong. Their bones are inside their bodies. The table went completely silent. No. That's impossible. How do they even function? And then, the cafeteria doors slid open. A single figure strolled in. The students froze. The Deathworlder had arrived. He wasn't what they expected. There were no glowing battle scars, no visible cybernetic enhancements. He was average height, messy-haired, wearing a standard military uniform with what appeared to be food stains on the front. His soft, unarmored skin was fully exposed, his facial expression relaxed, his entire posture screaming, "I have never known fear in my entire life." "That's it," whispered the Thryn cadet. "Why is it not wearing armor?" a Sarnak muttered. "I can see its skeleton moving under its skin," the Vorlex wheezed. And then, the Deathworlder spoke. "Hey, do you guys have fries?" The room exploded. The Galactic Academy's emergency alarms triggered. Students dove under tables. Instructors activated their combat reflexes. A Vorlex cadet fainted on the spot. The Deathworlder, completely unaware of the sheer panic he was causing, scanned the food options casually, scratching his head. A Sarnak warrior, still gripping the edge of the table, whispered, "It speaks." So casually. The Thryn cadet's mandibles clicked violently. No fear, no hesitation. It asks for food as if this is a normal day. The gelatinous Vorlex, still quivering, muttered the only explanation that made sense. It does not understand danger." The human finally turned toward the stunned crowd, holding a tray with a sandwich. "Yo, what's up?" The cafeteria collectively lost its mind. The rumors intensified. The human's name was Dave. Just Dave. Not Dave the Flesh Ripper. Not Dave the Indomitable. Not even Dave the Bone Splitter. Just Dave. Which meant every human must be like this. The cadets gathered in hushed meetings, trying to make sense of the absolute horror they had just witnessed. A Cathari officer sat at a round table with other students, their crystalline fingers tapping nervously. He showed up and just talked to us, like we were equals. A Thryn cadet, still visibly shaken, added, "He asked for fries as if that was the most pressing concern in his life." A Sarnak officer, his scales pale with stress, gritted his fangs. "He was not wearing armor. He has no exoskeleton, no plating, just soft, fragile skin." The Vorlex, still recovering from their earlier fainting spell, oozed forward weakly. Which means he must not need armor. A silence fell over the group. The realization hit them all at once. Oh stars! The Deathworlders are immune to damage. The Thryn officer grabbed the table in sheer existential panic. I saw him scratch his head. He touched his own brain case, casually. The room erupted into terrified debate. This creature, this Dave, walked among them like a god wearing civilian clothes. And then the real horror arrived. Someone pulled up his training schedule. The Deathworlder was going to attempt the Gauntlet of Doom. Without armor, the students lost their minds. The aliens expected a monster. They got Dave, and soon they would witness the true horror of a Deathworlder in action. The Gauntlet of Doom was not just a training exercise. It was a nightmare made real. Designed to separate the truly elite from the weak, the Gauntlet had hospitalized even the most promising recruits. It had permanently crippled soldiers who dared to take it unprepared. It was considered a rite of passage, a brutal test of endurance, strength, and pure survival instinct. Every species wore reinforced armor just to make it through. And now, Dave the Deathworlder was about to attempt it, without armor. The news spread instantly. Cadets rushed to the observation decks, whispering in absolute disbelief. Is he insane? Does he not know what's in there? Maybe he thinks he's wearing armor but forgot to put it on. The instructors, normally calm and disciplined, were visibly concerned. A Sarnak commander, a veteran who had survived 3 wars, shook his head. This is not courage. This is madness. A Cathari strategist adjusted his crystalline visor. There is no tactical advantage to this decision. The human is deliberately handicapping himself. A Thrin officer leaned forward, whispering in absolute dread. Which means he doesn't need armor. Silence fell over the room. The realization hit them all at once. The Deathworlder was doing this as a casual challenge. Dave strolled onto the Gauntlet platform, completely relaxed. He stretched his arms, rolling his shoulders like he was about to go for a morning jog. The instructor's voice crackled through the intercom. "Human cadet, do you require last-minute armor adjustments?" Dave looked up. "Oh, nah. I just had lunch. Don't want to feel heavy." The silence was deafening. One of the instructors physically dropped his datapad. A Vorlix cadet, standing near the back, let out a long, horrified gurgle before collapsing. The instructor slowly turned off his microphone. He was done. The sirens blared. The Gauntlet of Doom activated. And that was when the true nightmare began. The first wave of plasma turrets locked on. The projectiles designed to stun and incapacitate even armored soldiers fired instantly. The audience braced for the Deathworlder to be vaporized. Instead, he dodged. Not by diving, not by rolling, just a casual step to the side. The Thrin officer let out a strangled noise. He's dodging them, on foot. A Cathari cadet shook his crystalline head in pure denial. "That's not possible. That's not possible." Dave, completely unbothered, casually dodged 3 more shots. Then he picked up a rock and tossed it into the air, for fun. He's playing with rocks. The plasma turrets overheated from missing too many shots. Dave strolled forward. The gravity distortions activated. The pressure on the field tripled instantly. In training exercises, even armored cadets collapsed. Dave grunted slightly. Oof, feels like leg day. Then he did a squat. The Cathari officer screamed. The gravity doubled. Dave did a second squat. All right, yeah, I feel the burn now. A Sarnak cadet made a choking sound. He is treating a survival exercise as strength training. The instructor shut off his datapad. There was nothing left to record. The wall of fire activated. Even with armor, cadets had to run through it at full speed, using energy shielding to avoid serious burns. Dave. He walked, slowly, through the fire. A Vorlex cadet melted to the floor. He is immune to fire. The Thrin officer, whose species evolved on a planet where even mild heat waves were deadly, grabbed the nearest bench for support. Number, he is not immune. He is simply ignoring it. Dave emerged from the flames, dusting off his uniform. You know, I think my uncle's barbecue gets hotter than that. The aliens lost their minds. The gauntlet kept escalating. And Dave? He never stopped smiling. The aliens expected him to struggle. He called it a workout, and the worst was yet to come. The Galactic Academy of Military Excellence had spent centuries refining the Gauntlet of Doom to be the ultimate combat trial. Now, they were realizing it was not designed for Deathworlders, because Dave was not struggling, he was having fun. The instructors watching from the control room had abandoned their data pads. The alien cadets in the observation deck had stopped breathing. And now, the final test was activating. The adaptive combat arena. A shifting battlefield designed to analyze an opponent's strengths, calculate weaknesses, and deploy increasingly difficult challenges. It had never been beaten without injury. Dave cracked his knuckles. All right, last round. Let's make it interesting. The arena AI activated. A deep, mechanized voice echoed across the field. Scanning combatant, adjusting difficulty, deploying maximum challenge mode. The observation deck went completely silent. A Vorlix cadet slid to the floor. Maximum challenge. A Cathari officer, voice shaking, muttered, "It has never needed to adjust that high before." The adaptive combat arena constructed a perfect combat opponent. A holographic Zalrath berserker, enhanced to the peak of warrior perfection, materialized before Dave. It stood 10 feet tall, its energy weapons humming, its combat algorithms calculating the best way to kill him instantly. The entire alien student body held their breath. A Sarnak cadet whispered, "Finally." Something that might stop him. The holographic warrior lunged. And then Dave moved. And it was over. The punch was almost too fast to see. A single, precise, effortless strike. The combat AI, built to withstand the galaxy's most powerful warriors, collapsed instantly. The hologram shattered. The adaptive combat arena crashed. The entire system rebooted. The announcement system stuttered, then finally spoke in a flat, emotionless tone. Error. Combatant is outside of simulation parameters. Shutting down. The entire academy lost its mind. The Galactic Academy of Military Excellence had never seen anything like this. The Gauntlet of Doom had been beaten. Without armor, without enhancements, without effort. Dave dusted off his hands. Welp, that was fun. So, do I get a trophy, or is this just for bragging rights? The aliens broke. A Cathari officer stood up too fast and immediately passed out. A Thrin cadet, rocking back and forth in a chair, whispered, This is a Deathworlder's warm-up?" A Sarnak warrior, voice hollow, muttered, "We have been training our entire lives for nothing." The instructor had stopped speaking entirely. The Vorlix student, still visibly melting from stress, uttered the final words that would haunt every cadet for years. This was an ordinary human, a single, unarmored Deathworlder, and he had just broken the entire academy. For weeks, the news spread. Reports of the human who conquered the Gauntlet of Doom circulated across the galaxy. Some refused to believe it. It was a malfunction, a lie. Others panicked. And the bravest among them? They started studying humanity, because if an unarmored, unprepared Deathworlder could humiliate them this badly, they needed to be ready. And Dave? Dave went back to the cafeteria. A fellow cadet, still shaking, asked him what it was like to face the gauntlet. Dave shrugged. I've had worse. Anyway, you guys got smoothies here." And with that, the legend of the human who broke the gauntlet was born. The aliens thought humans were fragile. They were wrong. And now, the galaxy would never see Deathworlders the same way again. The Galactic Academy of Military Excellence was in a state of crisis. The Gauntlet of Doom had never been beaten like this. It was supposed to be a brutal test of endurance, designed to push warriors to their limits. Instead, Dave walked through it like a guy looking for the snack bar. The alien students weren't sure what was worse: the fact that he had casually shrugged off gravity distortions, dodged plasma fire without trying, and strolled through a wall of flames like it was a warm summer breeze, or the fact that he looked slightly disappointed. The instructors, battle-hardened veterans from every major military power in the galaxy, had no idea how to process what had just happened. An emergency faculty meeting was called immediately. The lead instructor, a towering Zalrath warlord, slammed his fist against the table. "We must investigate what kind of enhancements this Deathworlder possesses." The room murmured in agreement. No organic species can endure this kind of punishment unaided. A Thrin strategist pulled up a biometric analysis of Dave. A deep silence fell over the group. The data was unmistakable. No implants, no genetic modifications, no exoskeleton, just a normal human. Meanwhile, the students were struggling with their own existential crisis. A Cathari officer stared blankly at the table. He did squats in triple gravity. A Thrin cadet buried his face in his hands. He wasn't even taking it seriously. A Sarnak recruit, who had once believed his species was among the strongest in the universe, shuddered. "We are not prepared for Deathworlders." The Vorlix student, still recovering from earlier shock, oozed forward weakly. "We have trained for war against the wrong enemies." The table fell completely silent, because for the first time in history, the Galactic Academy was not training to fight humans. They were training to survive them. That night, a small group of alien students gathered in secret. They were the first of what would later become a movement, the Deathworlder Combat Study Group. Their goal? We must learn the ways of the Deathworlder. They studied human physiology, trying to understand how a species could be both fragile and indestructible at the same time. They analyzed human history, discovering that their wars were long, brutal, and often completely unnecessary. They watched footage of extreme sports, horrified to learn that humans willingly hurled themselves off cliffs for fun. A Thrin officer stared at a screen, watching a human bungee jump. They do not fear death. A Cathari cadet clicked through a list of human endurance events. Marathon runners. They run for hours just to see if they can. The Sarnak recruit's scales paled. They have military units trained to survive in frozen wastelands, others to survive in boiling deserts, others to survive underwater. There is nowhere they cannot go. The Vorlix student, still visibly shaken, let out a low gurgle. "We are so doomed." The next day, Dave had no idea any of this was happening. He was completely unaware that the alien students were rebuilding their entire understanding of warfare around his existence. He strolled into the cafeteria, stretching and yawning. A Cathari recruit, still traumatized, instinctively ducked under a table. A Thrin officer, determined to act normal, failed miserably. A Sarnak warrior tried to pretend nothing was wrong, but his hands shook as he picked up his food tray. Dave didn't notice any of this. "Hey, morning guys. So, I got a question." A tense silence fell over the room. The lead instructor, still processing the events of the previous day, narrowed his eyes. "What is it, Deathworlder?" Dave scratched his head. "So, do we have, like, a tougher course I can try?" 'Cause that last one was kinda easy. A crystalline Cathari recruit physically shattered a piece of his own arm. The lead instructor resigned. The entire cafeteria collapsed into panic. And that was the moment the Galactic Academy of Military Excellence accepted one undeniable truth. They were not training humans. They were training to survive them. The aliens thought they were training warriors. Now, they were training to avoid extinction. The Galactic Academy of Military Excellence was never the same after Dave's arrival. For centuries, the Academy had been a beacon of elite training, where the strongest warriors of the galaxy honed their skills, pushing themselves beyond their limits. Now it was a place of existential horror, because the Deathworlder had called their hardest combat course kinda easy. The entire institution was in chaos. Military analysts, instructors, and combat specialists from every major species convened in emergency meetings. The primary topic: how do we prepare for Deathworlders? A Sarnak general, scales still pale from stress, slammed his fist against the table. "Our training programs are insufficient." A Cathari commander, his crystalline body flickering with distress, gritted his teeth. They endure extreme gravity like it's a mild inconvenience. A Thrin strategist, visibly exhausted, muttered, "They walk through fire. They dodge plasma. They punch things that should not be punched." The Vorlix research specialist, whose entire species was biologically incapable of stress, was currently experiencing it for the first time. We have made a mistake. The Council of Military Science, composed of the most brilliant tactical minds in the galaxy, had reached one undeniable conclusion. They were not ready for Deathworlders. Meanwhile, Dave remained completely oblivious. He had no idea that he had single-handedly sent the Academy into a spiral of panic and existential dread. All he knew was that he was kind of hungry. As he strolled into the cafeteria, humming to himself, the alien students froze. The entire room tensed. Every species stared in silence, watching him move, tracking his every step. He grabbed a tray, completely unaware of the sheer terror he radiated just by existing. "Oh, sweet, they got sandwiches today." A Cathari recruit twitched violently. He eats food meant for fuel, with enthusiasm. A Thrin officer swallowed hard. Is that a raw vegetable? He is consuming plant matter without processing it first." The Vorlix cadet melted slightly. "We are not ready." Dave took a casual bite of his sandwich, then looked around at the horrified faces staring at him. "You guys good? You look like you just saw a ghost." The room remained silent. A Sarnak cadet, voice barely above a whisper, muttered, "You are the ghost." Dave blinked. Cool. Anyway, who wants to train later? I need a sparring partner." A Cathari recruit immediately collapsed. A Sarnak officer dropped his food tray. A Vorlix soldier simply rolled under the table, assuming the fetal position. The cafeteria had officially lost its mind. The news spread instantly. The Deathworlder seeks more combat. He has conquered the Gauntlet of Doom, and yet he is not satisfied. The Deathworlder is not preparing for war. The Deathworlder is war. Instructors debated banning him from further combat drills. Strategists drafted survival plans in case of a Deathworlder rebellion. A full psychological evaluation was ordered. The results? Subject shows no abnormal aggression, no outward hostility, appears completely unaware of his own terrifying capabilities. Potential threat level, unknown. Weeks later, Dave still had no clue that the Academy was preparing for war against his existence. He was just trying to make friends. "So hey," he said, leaning against the table where several alien cadets sat, still traumatized. "What do you guys do for fun around here?" A Thrin officer trembled. "Fun?" Dave nodded. "Yeah, like sports or whatever. You know, something challenging." A Vorlix recruit started hyperventilating. The Sarnak cadet's claws dug into the table. He seeks greater difficulty. The Cathari officer barely managed to whisper, We are not prepared for Deathworlders." The Galactic Academy of Military Excellence officially revised its training curriculum. All Deathworlder participants were monitored under special conditions. New courses were developed. None of them were for training humans. They were for training everyone else to survive them. The Academy's greatest minds gathered to discuss a new strategy. A single horrifying realization had changed their entire approach to combat education. We are not training Deathworlders. We are training to survive them. One day, months after the disaster known as Dave, a young Cathari cadet pulled up the archived footage of the Gauntlet of Doom. They watched as Dave casually completed the hardest course in the galaxy, wearing nothing but his standard fatigues, a grin on his face. They paused the footage, stared at the human's face, and whispered the question that every species feared. What if he wasn't even trying? The aliens thought humans were fragile. They were wrong. And now, the galaxy would never see Deathworlders the same way again.